Your success with the hip grip is to use your body mechanics to your advantage. Not only do you want to use your big muscle groups, but also use the triangle principle. We know in construction the triangle is used because of its strength, and the same is going to apply here. Starting with your stance, be athletic so the big muscle groups from your core and your legs are doing the work. You can see the triangle working here on Aaron as he's got his front foot, back foot, and groin in that triangle position. Keep an arm's length of hose out in front of you. This is measured by your fingers being able to grasp the tip of the nozzle. The bail should be rotated in towards your body so you have easy reach, manipulation, and control. With the nozzle out front at this distance, you're going to be able to agitate the nozzle as needed to hit the fire, the floor, the overhead, and all the surrounding surfaces that are holding in all the heat. Do this by grabbing the hose behind the nozzle and creating a whipping action. This is why you want the best section of hose behind your nozzle. Move the nozzle with purpose to cool your environment and extinguish the fire. If you're using a solid bore nozzle, this will break up the stream, which gives the water more surface area to absorb the heat. Now, the upper body mechanics on the hip grip will give you the ability to expend less energy fighting the nozzle reaction. Your backhand should not be gripping the hose as the primary means to fight the nozzle reaction because the forearm muscles are going to get tired, as you all know. Instead, take the heel of that hand and push the hose into your body. This is where friction is your friend. Push the hose down and into the angle between your hip and the top of your thigh. Keep the pressure in front of that hip bone for your best advantage. If you find your hand too far back and trying to put pressure on the side of your hip bone, readjust and get that backhand pressured into the front of the hip. Push in and down through the pelvis to create the friction you need. This is going to take a little bit of time for you to find your personal sweet spot, so get some reps in on the drill ground until you get it dialed in. The hip grip also works well with the 2.5 because of your body mechanics. During a quick hit, you're likely to be hitting the fire for probably 30 seconds or less as the officer does their 360. Proper body mechanics, as you see here with Aaron on the 2.5, make it a lot more manageable. Yeah, the 2.5 is a great tool for hitting the fire hard with overwhelming GPMs and should always be a viable option during the decision-making process by the company officer. The hip grip is also done from the kneeling position when the conditions call for it. To transfer from standing to kneeling while flowing water, maintain those upper body mechanics, collapse the back leg and sit down on it. Okay? Stay athletic as you move through this motion. Keep the front leg bent to reduce any chance for injury should drywall or something come down off the ceiling. If your leg is straightened out and something comes down on it, you're going to be hurting. You can move between the standing and kneeling hip grip as long as you stay athletic and balanced. This is where core strength really comes into play. The clamp is primarily used for stationary applications. This position is going to use friction to your advantage and is especially useful on the 2.5 when the backup person isn't directly behind you. The shin or ankle from your back leg puts pressure down onto the hose and presses it into the ground with your body weight. Make sure that you rock back onto that back leg and sit down on it. In the clamp, the ground takes the nozzle reaction instead of you. Keep the front leg bent to avoid injury from drywall or something coming down on it. There's going to be times in a structure when you're on the hose line by yourself while your partner is performing another task, like maybe checking the overhead. Obviously still in voice, visual, or touch. You may have to advance the hose line down the hall a bit without any help. An option to do this is the clamp slide. The clamp slide allows you to move hose using your big muscle groups and mechanical advantage. First, place your back hand on the ground parallel with that front leg. Push the hose forward with your back leg and hips, and at the same time, pull the nozzle back over the shoulder. This creates mechanical advantage with your body, creating a lever action. One advantage of being in the clamp and the clamp slide is that you can be up facing your environment. Your head is going to be up as opposed to that traditional crawling on the hands and knees, dragging that hose along, because we know that it's hard to get your head tilted up, seeing what's really going on in your environment. So get in the clamp for me, buddy. All right, in that clamp slide, you're able to advance that hose. You're actually facing your environment, whether it's low or no visibility. Another good thing is that you got your weight back most of the time on that hose as you're moving through. And so if there's a hole in the floor or any soft spots in the floor, you're gonna be able to feel them out with that front foot prior to your body getting there. If you're in a position where you need to be flowing water at all times, maybe a defensive application or on an LP tank, You can transition from standing to kneeling to the clamp and back again if you're fatigued. So going from the standing to the kneeling, you're simply going to collapse that back leg, just like we learned before. Now going from kneeling to the clamp, it's very important that you take that backhand and you pin that hose to the ground, so you use friction to your advantage as you're transitioning that leg over into the clamp position. From here, you can take a little breather, you get a little rest. You're in that position for a long period of time. If you need to transition back up to standing, once again, ensure that that backhand is pinning that hose to the ground as you transition back into your kneeling hip grip. And then once you're set, using that triangle principle once again, push up on the back leg, standing up using your body's mechanical advantage and the big muscle groups to help you through that process. The backup person has an important role. Their job is to move hose and absorb nozzle reaction so the nozzle person doesn't have to. Regardless of the situation, the backup person is always a second set of eyes to the nozzle. It's important for the backup person to use good mechanical advantage, use their big body muscles. Once again, using that triangle principle like Dave has here, he's taking that nozzle reaction so Aaron doesn't have to. Aaron's busy working on fighting the fire instead of fighting the hose. Feeding that hose straight into Aaron's back hip is extremely important because that's the way the nozzle reaction wants to go, and he's going to fight it straight back. If Dave is bringing that hose in at one angle or another, it's going to throw Aaron off balance, and it's a lot more uncomfortable for him, and he's going to be doing a lot more work instead of working on the fire like he should be. If the backup person is taller than the nozzle person, try to avoid having that hose way up into that armpit. Make sure you pay attention to that hose going directly into that back hip, straight into that nozzle person. And as you can see, when Dave made his way up, he grabbed a bite from back here and he brought it forward so he set themselves up for the next successful movement into the structure. One of the jobs of the backup person is to feed hose more or less to that nozzle person if they need it. And the nozzle person is simply just going to ask for more hose or less hose.
More hose. Less hose. Good.
The job of the backup person when in the clamp and the clamp slide when you're going to move hose is number one, make sure you're several feet back from that nozzle person so that they have room to freely maneuver that nozzle to where they need to. This front hand's going to be pinning that line to the ground, and they know they need to do that even if it's zero visibility or really low visibility because they can feel that that water is flowing. The backhand is going to be palm up, and that elbow is inside of this knee in preparation for the movement of the hose using those big body muscle groups. When he feels the line shut down, he's going to know that it's shut down, and then he's getting ready to move. So his hand's going to come out for stability. He still has his palm up, his elbow inside of that knee, and now we can advance the hose using those big body muscle groups. Go ahead and advance that hose, guys. When Aaron reaches his destination and he wants to start flowing water again, Dave's going to feel that line open up and he's going to repin that hose to the ground, driving it in there using friction as his friend, taking up that nozzle reaction so Aaron can just focus on fighting fire instead of fighting the hose.